Hello, I'm Krasi Ivanova-Twig, and this is the Global Jigsaw podcast from BBC Monitoring, where we follow media in up to 100 languages. Over the last 4.5 years, the biggest story for our Ukraine and Russia teams has, of course, been the war in Ukraine and what's been happening on that 1,000-kilometer long front line. With me in the studio is Vitaly Shevchenko, our chief analyst, who is himself Ukrainian, to talk about the civilians who are still living in the danger zone. Vitaly, we have heard a lot about evacuations in the early days of the war, and many people left those areas of active combat. But there are people who are still there. It's a very long front line there. So has the need for evacuations changed?
It's changed in the way that it's more difficult to evacuate people from the front line. But the fact remains, civilians are still there, literally with bombs flying over their heads, hitting their homes, drones buzzing overhead. Donetsk police say thousands of civilians are still there in Donetsk region alone, and a massive effort is still underway to get them out of the danger zone. This year alone, more than 3,000 civilians have been evacuated from Donetsk region, more than 1,000 of them children. So that, Krasi, gives us an idea of the scale of the challenge.
But it has been 4.5 years since the start of the full-scale invasion. Why are they still living there? Is it inability to move? Is it unwillingness? What's behind this resistance to leave their homes?
Some can't leave, some won't leave. And it's important to remember that a huge number of those thousands of civilians trapped in their basements and cellars, they've had a lot of time to have a think about what's going on. For a lot of these people, this means that they've made a decision to stay. After talking to people involved in these evacuations, it seems as though most of the people who are there on the front line, they are sort of advanced in their years, which means they're rooted, they are wedded to their homes. One thing I've heard a lot is, well, I've got my chickens and cats and dogs and goats. How am I supposed to leave them all behind? To which evacuators say, we can take them with you. There's one notable instance of a police unit in Ukraine's northeastern Sumy region. They had been approaching one particular gentleman there in a village, saying, look, you've got to go. It's getting really dangerous. You will die probably if you don't leave. And he said, I've got 11 goats. How do you want me to abandon them? So what the police did, they turned up in a massive white van. So they put in that van not just the gentleman, but all of his 11 goats.
This kind of attachment to your home is something we can all understand. But what I find extraordinary is that it's not just the people who are determined to stay, but we hear about people who have returned. There was one case of a woman who returned after she left and opened a kebab shop, which is an extraordinary act of defiance. But why do people go back?
If, however, you are more able-bodied, you can come and go if you want. A lot of people I've been following, they came to a conclusion that there's more to life than just physical safety. So some people, after going to safer places within Ukraine or abroad, they reach the conclusion that, I'm fed and watered, I'm safe, but a huge chunk of my life is missing. I don't feel at home here. I feel out of place here. I'm losing my identity. I'm going back, whatever happens.
Let's turn to the people who are doing the evacuations. Who are the evacuators? What kind of people take up this job?
All sorts of people, Cressy. There's an official police unit called White Angels. There are numerous volunteers. The military are involved in it when they are going into a town or a village or passing through it and they see a civilian, they tend to offer them to leave. It's kind of unusual and notable that the military, the police and civilian volunteers, they work really, really closely together. And I spoke to somebody from the police in Donetsk region, and I asked him, do these civilian volunteers, do they not get in your way? He said that, well, they have expertise, they know what they're doing. Some of them have really important local knowledge, and every little helps. Sometimes it's every, a big ways of helping the police. So they go on missions together. In terms of who these people are specifically, I've been following one Ukrainian TV personality, TV DJ, TV presenter, Denis Christov, who dropped all that and became an evacuator. He's one of many people doing that, completely switching their lines of activity. Another person I've been in touch with is called Vlad Machovsky. He's a businessman from Zaporizhia. And he's also a religious man. He's a pastor, and he says, it's my life's mission to help people, to save people. That's what I do. I was struck by something said by a volunteer called Bogdan Zuyakov. After being wounded on one of the evacuation missions, he said, okay, I'm wounded now, I'm going to recover and go back. So to me, that is so important to understand why they're doing it.
So it's a calling and a mission. And as you say, people from all walks of life just stop doing what they're doing to take up this function of saviors, really, of lives. What does it take, though, to become an evacuator? Because presumably a desire to help and a kind heart is not enough.
Oh, it's absolutely not enough, Chrissy. You've really got to know what you're doing. Volodichenko from Donetsk police, he said that when they train police evacuators, they prefer local people because they know the routes, they know the little nooks and crannies and little footpaths that help evacuate when things go south quickly. And they can change for the worst really, really quickly with all these drones buzzing around, with endless Russian attacks. You need to know how these drones operate. You need to know how to use anti-drone technology. Vlad Machovsky from Zaporizhia, he showed me what he had. It was a big drone detector, which sort of beeps when there's a drone about. Then Vlad had a pistol that shoots nets out to capture the drones, not bullets, but nets, and also a big, good old-fashioned rifle that shoots down drones. To survive, you need to know that.
So are drones the biggest danger that they have to navigate? So-called
FPV drones, yes, first-person view drones, which are smaller than the ubiquitous Shahed drones, for example, but they are very lethal.
Which is why the vans that they use are equipped with this grill on top, right? This is to protect the vehicle from drones.
Yeah, they call them barbecue grills. Vlad is using one of them. It's a big van, and there's a grill on top. The idea is that if the drone hits the vehicle, it explodes a certain distance away from the actual body of the vehicle, and the hope is that it will reduce the impact of the explosion.
And these drones, do they target these vehicles deliberately?
It would appear that some do. I've heard several accounts of vehicles with red crosses on them being targeted, vehicles with inscriptions saying evacuating civilians, they've been targeted as well.
So the evacuators are facing lethal danger just to reach their destination, just to go to these people. But then they'll have the task of persuading them. How do they do that?
It's not easy to convince somebody to leave everything behind and just go places. People like Denis Christov, who is really good as a communicator, being a media personality. The main thrust of his communication with somebody who's not prepared to leave is, well, look, there's a way. Do not feel stuck. Do not feel like you're making a choice that is too costly for you as a person. Your dog, your goats, your chickens, they'll come with you. We'll find a place for you to stay. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Pavlo Dyachenko from Donetsk Region Police, he said they appeal to their relatives to record a short, 30-second video, which they can show to the person they're trying to evacuate. But look, it's not me telling you, it's not me asking you, it's your daughter, it's your grandson begging you to leave. You don't want to listen to me, listen to somebody from your own family.
So this is a very complex logistical operation, and not only they have to know the terrain and evade drones and a whole mix of lethal dangers, they have to persuade reluctant residents to get onto the vans and leave. So it's quite a difficult task. Can you take us through how the evacuation unfolds? What are the different stages? Because it's not just one journey. Those people need to be taken to safety first, and then what happens afterwards?
The beginning of this journey, in most cases, starts with a request for help or a signal, a message that there's somebody there who may need to be evacuated. There's a hotline set up by the government jointly with volunteers, evacuators and police. They can be told of somebody needing evacuation. What happens then needs to happen really quickly, because the so-called grey zone or the kill zone has expanded greatly. Most of the videos filmed by evacuators, they are really, really fast-paced. You need to get into the vehicle quickly and go. So many videos show vehicles being targeted, volunteers being targeted. Some of these initial stages, they involve armored vehicles used by the military, vehicles used by the police. Their job is to get you to the safest location possible. Then the next leg is getting to a place of even more safety, a properly organized refugee center, and then the local authorities and or civilian evacuators, they decide where to put you next. So anything goes. You find a flat, you move into a flat. You find somebody willing to accept refugees into a flat. That's what happens.
Does the state not step in?
Ukrainians know that there's a limit to what the state can do. That's why volunteers get involved. But there are state programs, there is a state effort. The very existence of a special police unit called White Angels means that the state is very acutely aware of these people, thousands of them, in desperate need of evacuation. And the state at least tries to provide them with everything they can provide them with from the very first stage of receiving calls on the hotline.
You say the evacuators are targeted while they're doing this job. What's the toll on them? One description I've read about them is hell jumpers.
It is hell. And just like everybody else, they get wounded and killed. One example is Vyacheslav Ilchenko, a civilian evacuator who got killed on Christmas Day last year on the way to evacuate a wounded elderly gentleman from Kostiantynivka in Donetsk region. There were two other volunteers with him. He died. They were injured. They recovered. They went back.
How is the Ukrainian media portraying the evacuators and the evacuations? Is there a lot of attention to what they're doing?
I've been looking at Ukrainian media and what they're saying about this phenomenon, and I've not found much comment, because what they do, they let actions do the talking. There was one report by Inter TV where they embedded with a police unit evacuating someone, and they got hit. So they showed this incredibly dramatic report of people being targeted, literally evacuating someone who was on a makeshift stretcher, like a cart with wheels, because that person wasn't mobile, and they were targeted by Russia. So they just showed it without much comment, and I think it's probably the most effective and impressive and most genuine way of showing it.
So is there a legal framework in how these evacuations are conducted?
There are three sort of types of evacuation. One is voluntary. You're offered a chance. You can go. It's getting really dangerous. We think you're best wise to move. Second level is compulsory, where police will knock at your door and say, you got to leave. However, you can still refuse. You can sign a form saying, I've been informed of the danger. I'm refusing to go. The third and final, the top level of evacuations is forced, where you have no option. And it's a relatively recent thing. And the law regulating it was passed to guarantee the rights of children. Because there are some parents who have made the choice to risk their lives and stay put on the front line, live where they are. But Ukrainian legislators and the Ukrainian state, what they argue is that parents do not own children. They have no right to expose them to danger. There are instances of military patrols or police patrols just driving through a village, and children would run out of basements like, take me away, I can't live here.
You said earlier that the evacuators have to be extremely nimble in order to respond to changing circumstances. How has this process, the job of evacuating civilians, how has it changed over the course of the war?
At the start of the war, when drones were not so widespread, not so lethal in terms of ever-present lethal danger, the police would go into a town or a village, gather the locals or use megaphones or whatever and tell them, look, we've got a bus here, we think you've got to go, and then it would be up to the locals to decide whether they wanted to go. That has changed. One of the more effective ways in which this is happening now, one of the ways in which evacuations have sort of become more streamlined, there's more coordination between the police, the state, administrations and charities, but the danger is much bigger now because of the drones. They're getting more lethal, they're getting smarter. A lot of them use AI, and the decision to kill is taken by a machine.
Thank you, Vitaly, and also to the people who shared their stories with you. And thank you for watching. If you're interested in more insight and analysis, you can watch and listen to more episodes of the Global Jigsaw. And if you would like to find more about BBC monitoring, you can do so by visiting our website monitoring.bbc.co.uk.